go again?
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the bridge, dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome. You've seen it before. Movie reviews with connections in mind. Gran Turismo is the newest video game adaptation in theaters now. It is directed by Neil Blomkamp and stars Archie Madekwe as Jan Martinborough. It is based on a true story. It is based on Jan Martinborough's life. And it is also starring Orlando Bloom, David Harbour, and Jaimin Hansu, as well as others. And this is the true story of a young man who is participating in the Gran Turismo Academy, who, after dedicating his life to perfecting his race driving in Gran Turismo, is given the chance to race real race cars in the real world, and how the race world reacts to his presence. Now, this video review will contain spoilers of Gran Turismo. I'll be doing my spoiler-free thoughts first and foremost, but just so you know, there will be some spoiler reviews later on in this review. So, first and foremost, let's get into some spoiler-free talk on Gran Turismo. Is it worth seeing in theaters? Is it a good movie overall? I would say this is definitely an enjoyable movie if you're in the mood for a underdog sports movie, mainly because this is definitely a I'll call it a stereotypical underdog sports story, because, I mean, like I said, you've seen this kind of thing before, where it's someone who is trying to break into a world where, you know, they quote-unquote don't belong. And then they're dealing with, you know, trying to prove themselves in that world, trying to deal with the people who don't think they don't belong in that world, the repercussions of all of this, and you deal with all this throughout Gran Turismo. And you know, there's not a whole lot to say that is new to the story, but I would say, as a, you know, based on a true story standpoint, I would say this is definitely a decent story, because as you know, as a true story, you know, when you see based on true story in Hollywood, you always think, all right, well, where did they exaggerate? Where did they, you know, bend the truth or all that? And there's certainly some elements that happens here. You know, some characters that are composites of real people, some events that didn't happen quite in the order that the movie showed. But I will give this movie credit where it gains my respect is there is a certain point in the story where, if you're familiar with Jan Martinborough's story, there is a accident in probably on the halfway point of the movie, but there is an accident where, you know, there's a crash, and it's a quite serious crash, and, you know, serious repercussions come about because of it. And, you know, this is mild spoilers, but this is the kind of thing that, you know, in a lot of Hollywood based on true stories, and especially when the subject is still alive and contributing creative input on these, that this is the kind of thing that they would you would often see that they would kind of tamp down. I give actual real props to, because Jan Martinborough was a creative consultant on the story, and also it is revealed by the end of the movie that he was also his, you know, Archie Madekwe's stunt double. He was basically his own stunt double in his movie. So he was not one to sanitize his life. You know, he doesn't want to shy away from the more unpleasant side of his career and how it affected him. And I give real respect to that. You know, these are the kind of things that, you know, if you want to give based on true story things, you know, life is a tapestry of positives and negatives, and you know, there is some debate as to whether, you know, how it is depicted in this movie is really true to how it happened in real life. But, you know, this is the kind of thing that's happened, you know, this is where it was slightly Hollywoodized in that they changed events around so that it would serve the dramatic, you know, pathos in a way. But, you know, aside from that, this is actually a, you know, pretty well based on, you know, true story that is fairly close to how the true story actually happened. And that's one thing. The other aspect of this is the video game movie aspect of this, because Gran Turismo is a video game. It is a race simulator. They kind of have to stress that a lot in this movie, where it's not quite a video game, it is a race simulator. And notably, you know, Gran Turismo is a video game where there is no story involved in it. It's just a very advanced race simulator where you get to race various tracks in different cars. It is supposed to be hyper realistic, and that's the conceit behind this. You know, these kids who have, you know, grown up and are the best at the Gran Turismo. It's a racing simulator. They should be able to fit them into the actual cars that they've been racing and go through it. There are a lot of times in the story in this movie where they have to remind you that this is a quote-unquote video game movie, and for the most part it works, but there are other times, especially near the end of the movie, where it is just incredibly distracting. There's one edit in particular where I understand why they put them in it as far as like a marketing ploy, but it felt like more of a trailer shot that they had to put into the movie rather than something that they needed to add for story's sake. And especially there are several callbacks in this movie, especially near the end, to things that happened in the beginning of the movie. And the movie's not terribly long. I would say it's, I want to say, what, 2 hours and 20 minutes, I want to say. And, you know, if your audience is already forgetting what characters said, you know, 2 hours ago, then what are you doing? Why do you need to call back to these specific moments? It's not the fact that you call back to those specific moments that you have to, you know, draw huge amounts of attention to this specific moment in order to know where the callback's from. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. One moment in particular with CGI and a car, you know, deconstructed by CGI. You know the shot I'm talking about. But overall, I would say, if you're into this kind of true story perspective, if you're a fan of the Gran Turismo video game series, and if you're into, you know, cars in general, I would say this is a fairly enjoyable time. It's not anything groundbreaking, but I would say this is definitely a enjoyable time in the theaters. So if I was going to give Gran Turismo a letter grade, I would say this is a solid, we'll give it an A-. We'll say. There's enough here that, you know, in my mind, there was enough distracting editing choices that knocked it down a bunch. But if you were going into this as a, you know, true story racing aficionado, I think you're having a good time with this. So that's my spoiler-free thoughts on Gran Turismo. Now let's lead into some spoiler talk as certain plot developments and character arcs that may seem familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. Really, this is not going to be a huge shock to anyone. This is the kind of story that if you've seen that kind of, underdog sports movie, you've basically seen all the tropes that you've seen in this movie. This is the kind of story that Hollywood loves to glom onto. But for the purposes of my review, I wanted to bring your attention to one movie in particular. And I actually rewatched this movie right after I saw Gran Turismo because I had the feeling in the theater, but I wanted to rewatch the movie in question because I hadn't seen it in a couple of years. But there are definitely some similarities here, and that is Ford v Ferrari. Because while it's not an exact one-to-one comparison between these two movies, there's definitely an underdog story shared between both of these, and they both deal in the world of motorsports. They both deal with, an underdog going against an established system. I'll call it an established system because in Gran Turismo, it's the system of, the professional racing world versus the they call it the sim racers. The sim racers, they can't be in the world of real racers. Whereas in Ford v Ferrari, it's it's back in the 1960s, and it's talking about Ferrari dominates racing in Europe. You can't challenge Ferrari in this, and Ford's like, no, we're going to challenge Ferrari in that. So there's that kind of underdog story about that. And, as far as story goes, both Gran Turismo and Ford v Ferrari culminate in the 24-hour Le Mans race. So there's that to be said for that comparison. But like I said, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I point to that as a general example of, the underdog sports story that you could say. There's a lot of tropes that Hollywood likes to gravitate towards. It's an easy story that could get audience attention towards. And aside from that, you can even find comparisons between Gran Turismo and Talladega Nights: The Battle of Ricky Bobby, and that was a full-blown comedy. So these are the kind of things that these kind of tropes, you've seen it in a lot of different movies, but I, picked Ford v Ferrari as my main comparison, just to highlight where you can find these comparisons, and find them all over the place. But that's not to say that, these kind of tropes aren't bad because they're repeated. You can repeat these tropes and still tell a compelling story. And for my money, I would say Gran Turismo is a compelling enough story, especially in these modern times, that you can enjoy the story as it is. I will say one point of contention, and this movie got away with it a little bit because they pointedly did not mention a year in this story because, and I did some research into this, the story of Jan Mardenborough, the GTA, the GTA Gran Turismo Academy, his reign in this, I believe he didn't win the Gran Turismo Academy until 2011, I want to say, and his racing career wasn't in full bloom until, 2013, 2015, that realm. But throughout this whole movie, you see, Jan Mardenborough did join Team Nissan, but Team Nissan is showing their modern logo, and I won't call myself a full car guy, but I'm a car fan, we'll put it that way. And I know for a fact that Nissan did not adopt their current logo until 2020. So, they show throughout throughout all Gran Turismo that they're showing their modern logo. And, if they were doing, true to form, based on true story, if they went back to 2015, it would have been their old logo. But they pointedly did not, say, this takes place in 2011, 2013. They could have taken place in present time. It's only based on a true story. So it's like, okay, Nissan, you get away with it this time. But I know I know that when you changed your logo. So again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who's obsessing over that kind of detail. But it just brings to focus my sensibilities when I'm watching a movie like this. So those are my main points of comparison with Gran Turismo. What did you think of the movie? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree, disagree, whatever? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be, thanks to the Hollywood strike, I'm having to shift around my slate. So the next movie review I'll be doing will be for A Haunting in Venice, which comes out September 15th. And if you like this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and especially subscribe. I would very much appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. But just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.